for coming today. I appreciate your time. My name is Holly Gordon. I am the assistant principal here at Yale. I also want to give you all a heads up that this presentation will be recorded. I'm using this for my doctoral classes. It will strictly just be used for the classes. Nobody else gets to see it except for me and my professor. So you are actually here today to hear about the bond. So let's take a look. When we talk about why we need a bond and why that bond cycle is so important for Richardson ISD, we got to think about who we're serving. So I've got some information about our demographics. This is as of the 24-25 snapshot. We currently serve almost 37,000 students, 5,700 employees. You can see all of the schools here. We've got the 4 high schools. One of those is the alternative school. 8 junior high / middle schools, which is a big conversation for this bond, and 36 elementary schools. Of those, 14 of the campuses are bilingual campuses, and 29 of those campuses are Title I campuses. So there's a lot of diversity and need within Richardson ISD. You can see here the percentages of some of our special populations of kids, emergent bilingual, economically disadvantaged, special ed, gifted and talented, and dyslexia. This also talks about just the sheer amount of space that Richardson ISD covers. We cover 46 square miles in Dallas County, and that is portions of Richardson, the city of Richardson, city of Dallas, and Garland, and that is approximately 240,000 people who reside in the ISD boundaries across those 3 cities. So it's a pretty significant chunk of families and students that we serve over a large span of space. So we have our bonds. Remember to vote whether it is for or against, but I'm glad you're here today to hear about what this is specifically for. Early voting does begin October 20th with election day, November 4th. A little bit of history. Why this bond and why this amount? We have, as a district, have been having bonds every 5 years. We typically have that cycle, and so the previous bonds have all been passed by Richardson ISD voters. This particular bond went in front of the Board of Trustees, and it is based on recommendations from our bond steering committee. That was a community-driven plan where these propositions for these bonds come from, and we'll get more into that as well. The 3 propositions do total $1.4 billion. I know that feels like a big number when it has a B on it, but we're also pretty in line with our surrounding districts. So we're going to see some of that information that I can come into. And the 3 propositions in this bond are designed to address mostly facilities in terms of safety and security, as well as some athletics costs, and finishing that junior high to middle school transformation across the entire district. So the bond steering committee was made up of parents, staff, community members, and business leaders. This was a very intentionally diverse group of people. The members of the bond steering committee were chosen to represent different demographics in terms of the 4 high school feeder patterns, as well as the parent, staff, and business people that this bond could potentially impact. So this was a true cross-section of what Richardson ISD looks like. And in doing that and being very intentional about this bond steering committee, having a committee of people who live in Richardson ISD say, this is what we want our district to look like, it brought in all the different perspectives and opinions and a lot of really interesting discussion. So these meetings were held this past year between March and July. And in these meetings, they took place at different locations. One of these meetings, for example, happened at the newly transformed Forest Meadow Middle School, and another one of the bond steering meetings happened at Liberty Junior High that has yet to have its renovation, so that our committee could see this is what our bond is meant for. We have some campuses that are 50 plus years old. The average age of buildings in Richardson ISD is 54 years old. So we're when we're talking about just general upkeep, that's a lot to take into consideration. So some of the bond is for that. Some of it is for that full renovation, remodel, rebuild in terms of the middle school transformation process. So what that bond steering committee came up with was 3 propositions. Some of this is based on legal parameters on what bond money can and cannot be used for. Some of this is a want. This is what we want for our community and our students to have so that we are the destination district in the area. So we're gonna go through each one of these propositions. So Proposition A is a biggie. There's a lot of information in this, and so that is the construction and instructional materials. In terms of Proposition A, this is where where ISD has to list all the areas that are not required by law to be separate. So that's why it ended up being so big. There's certain things that have to be separated out in separate propositions by law. So this one ended up being the big one. But you can kind of see some of the lists here, that infrastructure and safety. Most of our campuses need significant restroom renovations, roofing, HVAC, security updates, some of the just general maintenance in terms of cafeteria and classrooms, that has to be updated as well. Again, those 6 middle schools are gonna be transforming into from junior highs to middle schools so that our 6th graders can come out of the elementary campuses. 6th grade, in terms of our curriculum for the state of Texas, aligns with a secondary campus need. And so 6th through 8th all together offers our 6th graders more in terms of options and just meeting their social and emotional needs at a middle school campus. You can also see something that is a staff favorite, the environmental center and the building of a CTE center. So the environmental center is going to be more for our elementary, junior high kids, and then that CTE center is where our high schoolers can go and become fully certified before they even walk out of the doors of Richardson ISD. In terms of teaching and student support, yes, we've got some CTE supplies that we need. We've got some fine arts, uniforms, instruments, materials that we need. There are some athletic pieces that are included in this that don't have to be separated out into its own proposition. And some of our curriculum materials in Richardson are 10 plus years old at this point. And we know that in the last 10 years that the needs of our students have evolved significantly. And we need a new curriculum that has evolved as well so that we can really address what and how our students are learning, and that's part of this proposition. So the big one, we're looking at that middle school transformation. When we're looking at renovation of an entire campus, I'll kind of go back to that Forest Meadow Middle School example. Forest Meadows transformation was a true community project, and that's again where we go back to the community bond steering. They were very specific in that original part of Forest Meadow is the pillar. They want that for their community to stay. There were things that were great and open and airy about the main building. But it had been added onto so many times and the flow of it was really unsafe. There wasn't a designated main entry. There was a lot of safety things along with that. So those are the types of things that are taken into consideration when we're looking at each of these additional junior highs that will be transforming to middle schools. There is very much a community input piece for this, provided the funding is approved. The junior highs transforming into middle schools are not just a typical remodel, it is almost a rebuild. So we'll take that main heart of these buildings and community and build onto it so that it is a building that will grow with the kids, especially bringing up those 6th graders to meet the new demands of what our society and what our tech force and job force are looking for. here's a couple of those pictures. You can see in this top corner, that was the original kind of nondescript entry. There was no road here in the front of Forest Meadow, but now there actually is. There's a flow, there's a main door, it's very obvious. The inside is focused on modern design, and there is a lot of research that goes along with modern school building design. We know at this point that if we are around sunlight and natural light, that we are going to perform better. Us as teachers, and if we're in an office building, you want that window in your office. That makes all the difference, and it will absolutely make the difference for our kiddos. We also want to make sure that we're planning ahead for these flex type spaces, because boxes don't really work for kids, and they don't really work for the adults, quite honestly. And so these flex type spaces make a difference in how the building can evolve and transform in the future. Even though we're calling it the transformation now, this is going to continue to grow and transform with student needs. Also, in Proposition A is that Career and Tech Center. So this will be a brand new facility. It's a central facility that is going to be built, provided the funds are approved, on land that our ISD already owns. So a lot of you are familiar with the Richardson Operations Building. A lot of people know it as the building across from Restland, the cemetery. So that space, there's a big piece of land that's actually very close to Richland College. So there's some partnerships that are in the works with it as well. That's where the CTE Center is planned. The main point of this is to have those certifications, to have a landing point for all students who want to come in and learn trades. They will be bused in at very minimal cost, because we already own the buses, we already have the busing staff from each of the 4 high schools into the CTE Center, so that we have a singular place where all kids are going, where all staff is able to work together and collaborate, and where you, as the public, can come in and have things done. So things like, I can come in and get my hair cut by a student, I can come in and get a facial, I can go get my oil changed. These are things that the district is really wanting to have, that hands-on experience. It's a similar concept as to what Richardson already has in place with their partnership with Richardson Methodist Hospital, where the health students go to the hospital and partner and do hands-on experiences there. We're trying to create that, create experiences that again can evolve for the needs of our kids. Then the Environmental Studies Center, that has been around for 50 years. There's a lot of memories for those of us that have been around Richardson for a while, that we've been, there was one little building where the animals were. If the rain came along, we knew where the floodplain was, we couldn't cross the bridge. There's a lot of things that we were able just to see in action. Again, it brings the experiences alive, more so than any video or picture or story could ever do. Like if you're walking in that nature space and you see that animal, if you see, oh, I can see what that erosion looks like there. It's a hands-on experience that there's no replacing. And so that is going to be remodeled. We already have a bridge that we can actually cross if it rains, things like that. Like we want to make sure that we're getting more kids there, having those experiences. We may inspire somebody to be a veterinarian. They hadn't even thought about, oh, I love raccoons. We just don't know, like who would think of it, But these are something that we have to modernize the facility. There would be additional buildings for class space. So not only would they have the animal area, but they'd have classroom space and have improved accessibility, because again, it's nature, and we've got to have some ADA compliance in place to really make this a functional space for all students. Again, still in Proposition A, this is the big one. These are infrastructure and safety items. So you can kind of read through the list. These are these like maintenance type of things. We're gonna have to replace the roof at some point. We're gonna have to replace the heating and HVAC at some point. These are the things that need to be done in 50-plus-year-old buildings on a regular basis. Also included is that teaching and student support for the curriculum materials, the fine arts materials, and some athletic uniforms. So all of that is our biggest chunk at the 1.4 essentially mark. And yes, again, I hear you. It feels like a big number. And this is why this particular piece is so big, because it is all encompassing. It is gonna make the most difference for our kiddos. But then you might be thinking, well, what about my campus? What about my community? What about my little neighborhood school that I love so much? What are they getting? So we have some hard copies of this. I'll also pull it up here. Each of you can kind of see all of the campuses are listed down the side here. And then across the top is what is going to be in the Prop A portion of this bond for each campus. Thanks for getting those passed out. You can see that tech update is across. You know, our tech we've had for 5 years, that is typically done in those 5-year bond cycles. That includes student and staff tech, as well as, these are the specific devices, as well as some of the like application type of stuff, because when we have older tech, then you're also having to do additional maintenance on the back end. And so when we are bringing in this new tech through the bonds, then it also is kind of reducing the upkeep on the back end of that. The other big piece of this chart is the restroom renovations. Most campuses are getting a restroom renovation, as well as new furniture. We have, some campuses still have the old kind of slide into your desk and hopefully you're comfortable enough to actually pay attention and be engaged sort of situation with their furniture. And so the district is really looking at having that flexible type of furniture that's going to evolve, like we saw in the picture for Forest Meadow, pieces that can be moved around, pieces that are more, have more options for arranging so that you can do group work, do collaborative spaces, more in the style of a maker space. So there's like different activities going on. And then the other big piece of this is that first column is the HVAC piece. So that was a lot of information just on 1 out of 3 of the propositions. What the district has done is kind of done a highlighted video, and I would love to show you this because it gives you a better visual of what all of the words mean.
On November 4th, registered voters will have the opportunity to vote on a $1.4 billion bond package proposed by the Richardson ISD Board of Trustees. Bond 2025 is divided into 3 propositions on the ballot. Let's take a closer look into Proposition A, which includes construction and renovations, infrastructure and safety, and teaching and student support. Proposition A covers all district departments and is the largest portion of the bond, totaling $1,338,600,000. Planned projects would complete the RISD Middle School Transformation Initiative for the 6 junior high campuses that were not part of Bond 2021 capital projects: Apollo, Liberty, North, Park Hill, West, and Westwood. In 2020, following an extensive study and community input, RISD adopted the middle school instructional model. This transition moves 6th grade from elementary into junior high campuses, creating middle schools that serve grades 6 through 8. This aligns RISD with more than 95% of Texas districts. Considerations included academic performance, curriculum alignment, extracurricular opportunities, and student wellness. More information is available on the district website. Proposition A also includes the planned construction of a new Career and Technical Education, or CTE, center, serving students from all 4 high schools access to specialized, hands-on programs that strive to prepare students for high-demand careers with options to earn industry certifications. Another Proposition A project is the renovation of the Environmental Studies Center. For 50 years, RISD students have visited the center to study local plants and wildlife and engage in outdoor learning. The facility has not undergone significant updates since it opened, and nearby development has shifted the building further into the floodplain. Planned improvements include modernized facilities, improved accessibilities, and expanded capacity for student learning. Additional campus renovations district-wide would include foundation repair, flooring, windows, and playgrounds. Infrastructure and safety planned projects would cover health services improvements, energy efficiency, plumbing, HVAC, roofing, safety systems, buses, and equipment for maintenance, classrooms, and cafeterias. Teaching and student support items include instructional materials, CTE equipment, fine arts instruments, athletic equipment, and uniforms. These capital items, by definition, have a useful life of more than 1 year. Projects in Propositions A, B, and C would impact every RISD school. For details on planned projects at each campus, visit risd.org/bond2025. Early voting is October 20th through October 31st. Election day is Tuesday, November 4th.
I love that this gives a great visual. It's like just seeing the building happening, even though it's not necessarily like at all of our campuses right now, because we are looking at the bond to finish that process. It's a really exciting process. And so I do want to stop just for a moment and let you know that all of this information, including the videos that I'm showing you today, are on the website. RISD.org's main page has a bond location with all this information in it as well, and I will make sure that we take a look at that before we leave today. But if you're like, wow, I really want to show this video to people, like this is what our bond is being proposed for. That's a great thing. So we finally made it to Prop B. We're at Proposition B, that's covering the technology devices. You saw in that colorful dot chart that everybody would be getting new devices based on passage of Proposition B's bond. So this gives you a good idea of what all that covers. There's a lot of devices that we have across the district. And again, that 5-year bond cycle that Richardson ISD has typically participated in covers those. And so the update of a 5 to 5+ year old device at the speed that technology is evolving is pretty vital to keep not only us and having staff devices for teachers and paras and administration, but to have that student update and make sure that we are keeping them as up to date as possible as well. But then some equipment for that CTE lab, as well as our library media centers. So that prop is $54 million of the total 1.4. It is all for the technology piece of it. Again, it's based on staying current and effective in terms of our learning and instruction. And then when we look at Proposition C, this is specific to ADA and turf upgrades at both stadiums. So there's definitely been some conversation about, well, why are we doing things to our stadiums if we're having to right size our campuses? And this is part of it. A big piece of this is the ADA seating upgrades. Yes, our turf was replaced in 2016 with that particular bond, and turf has to be replaced every 10 or so years. So it is at the end of its life. This is specific to our 2 largest stadiums, the Eagle Mustang Stadium and Wildcat Ram Stadium. So the smaller stadiums are covered under a different proposition, but this by law has to be separated out because of the nature of the bond. And then this gives you a little bit more detail about what that looks like. So in the Prop A, is the athletics B field turf and lighting is replaced. There's some locker room refurbishments. There's some weight room and training equipment updates, the track equipment, and some of that like video analysis software that our high schools and junior highs are using. That is included in Prop A, but in Prop C, again, are those big things. The turf, the ADA accessibility improvements, the lighting upgrades. So if there's particular things that you feel really passionate about, and maybe not so much about other ones, this is where those propositions and really understanding what is in each of these comes into play. Now, a lot of people are concerned about what that's going to do to our tax rate. And so when we look at the average price of a home in Richardson ISD, it's about $500,000. This is an average that obviously varies from place to place around Richardson because we do cover such a large piece of land across 3 different cities, but our average price is at $500,000. And so when we talk about the annual increase in a tax bill for homeowners under 65, that's about $124 based on a $500,000 home. And so the monthly increase you'll see here again is $10.33. That's for passage of the whole $1.4 billion bond. This includes the 10% local option homestead exemption, and this assumes passage of the constitutional amendment that increases the state mandated home exemption. You can see that note at the bottom. So the homestead exemption up to $140,000. This was something that is in legislation, and we are believing will be passed. This kind of gives you a different viewpoint. It just shows you some of the other home values and where those fall, what the annual increase and what the monthly increase looks like. But again, Richardson ISD is one of only 2 local districts that has the over 65 exemption. So at 65, your taxes are frozen. And that means that over 65 is not impacted by the tax increase. Just a moment to kind of look over those. So that kind of begs the question, why are we taxing people so much more than everybody else? We're not. This gives you what our tax rate comparison looks like. The M&O and debt service and totals are all listed out here. Richardson is in that pink line, so you can see we're kind of in the average mode of our surrounding districts. This tax rate comparison is pretty eye-opening just in terms of all of the things that Richardson ISD is able to offer, especially when we're looking at some of our other districts that people consider destination districts on their own, such as Prosper or Sunnyvale. Allen, we know that they have their very sports-minded frame there, but you know, even then, like we're still right there with them about the same amount of tax. And then this kind of also gives you a different viewpoint. This, if you'll look across the bottom, starts at 2003-4. So Richardson ISD's tax rate was actually higher in the early 2000s and has consistently gone down, mostly based on state legislation. But this gives you like a really good visual of what the history of our tax rate looks like, and that no, it's not that bad. Like we're not really, as a school district, taxing to the extreme. It is more so been a steady flow based on needs and legislation. This particular graphic shows what the approved bonds have looked like since 2017. Because again, when we have a $1 billion bond sitting in front of us, it feels very heavy. So what we have done here is show what the approved bonds look like for our neighboring school districts. this bottom line in here on number 20 was the election date of 21, that last bond. You can see some of the more recent ones have been really along the lines of what we're proposing right now, Richardson ISD. This last bond for Dallas ISD, $3.5 billion. That was in 2020. But then we've got like some of our other, Salina at 2.3, that was just recently passed. This gives you a good idea. So even some of our growing districts down here, these are all successful bonds that have passed. All right, I wanted to make sure and get you to this website. So at this risd.org/bond 2025 takes you to a plethora of information. There's a lot of good stuff here that, again, you've got the videos, you've got the information, there's the individual propositions, where you can look at those details, the overview, the projects, all of this information is here in the website. So that is something that you can always refer back to. We do have additional information sessions still coming up. If there's additional questions that you want to pop in and ask to our district representatives. And again, that early voting starts right around the corner on October 20th. So I do want to give you all a chance to ask some questions. I'm gonna pause there and we can go back and look at different pieces. If there's a chart you want to look at, if there's just information that you want some clarification on, I am happy to answer that. Yes.
After the 5 years, does the tax rate go back to where it was before, or what, do they reset it?
It will stay the same unless there has been some type of legislative update.
Is the environmental center going to be open to like the public as well, or is it like a happy little nature trail for
That's
those
some of
living in
the
the neighborhood?
conversation. I know with the ADA compliance updates, that would be awesome. So that's a conversation that's being had. It wouldn't be open like during school hours because it would be reserved for the students and staff to come and visit. But that is definitely part of the conversation.
On the bathroom renovations, are we getting more bathrooms or are we just renovating the ones we have?
So the question was on the bathroom renovations, is that more or just kind of fixing up what we have? So it's some of both, depending on the campus. If the campus is of an age that the rebuild makes more financial sense, an ADA sense and capacity sense, if we're at a capacity number in the building, especially since we have done our right size efficiency moves, then it would be more. We're gonna be building in more restrooms that are updated, but then also updating the ones that we have so that they're meeting the current standard. What other questions? One of the things that I thought through, go ahead.
So the CTE center that's by the rock, when are they saying that would be finished and open?
They're looking to have that done by 2028. So in the similar type of time frame of the middle school transitions, that if the bond is passed would begin immediately. So they're talking like in the next 2 years, having that be in place so that it all aligns, like the middle school transformations are happening, the CTE opens, and we can do all those partnerships with that building also.
So if it passes, then this coming fall, all construction will begin. Construction will begin like fall 26.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, so what happens, let's say that it doesn't pass?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. So if it doesn't pass, the vast majority of this is not something that the district is gonna be able to do. What the district would have to do at that point is look at critical need updates. So, again, the vast majority of this would be off the list. Yes,
So moving 6th grade out of the remaining elementaries would probably not happen.
correct. Yeah, that middle school transformation being the largest part of the bond propositions, is so construction heavy that there's not funding for that currently. That transformation would be pushed down the road a little bit more, yeah. Something that has come up, with some other groups is about what's the long range plan, kinda like, well, if this doesn't pass, then what? Well, what is that long range plan? And because Richardson ISD does have that 5-year bond cycle, that they do some of the typical updates like the devices, the technology, that turf every 10 years. Some of, even beyond this, there are some things that the bond steering community committee was like, we want this, we need this for our community. That's still gonna be pushed off into the next 2 bond cycles. So our previous bond cycle in 2021 did 2 of the feeder pattern transformations for middle schools, did a lot of updates. A lot of campuses did receive that HVAC and roofing and new flooring and some updates, some renovations. But then we've got this current one, and the next bond cycle does already have some processing and planning that's already happening. So I think we're hopeful that we'll get the transformation and all of the updates that we're proposing in these 3 propositions, but if not, then some of that would be put off until the next bond cycle. What else? I talked a lot in this about the tax rate and what that means for individuals. And so I also wanted to make sure and point out that Richardson ISD is one of the few school districts in Texas that has a AAA financial rating. It's kind of like having that perfect 850 credit score. Like, we have a AAA rating, and there's very few school districts that are that fiscally responsible with all of their planning. And so a lot of that was taken into consideration when the bond propositions were put together. Like, how are we going to make sure that, kind of like when we went back to COVID and we had that 2020 bond, the plan had been then to do all of the transformations, but post-COVID construction prices shot up, and the district was like, we can't. We have to be fiscally responsible with the money that we have. And so that is something that I always like to bring up, because people are like, well, it's overspending, what are we doing with all this money? And I mean, they're pretty thoughtful with the AAA rating. Yeah. What else? Yes.
The Prop A talked about curriculum updates.
Yes.
Does the public have any knowledge about what that includes? Curriculum updates? Are we gonna know about that?
So that has been a process that was also a committee feedback process. And so it was similar to the bond committee process, where there's committee members from the community, as well as staff members from like campus administrators to teachers across all the grade levels. And so they did look at several different companies or types of curriculum. And then we have some campuses that did adopt the state's Bluebonnet curriculum, but outside of that is what the committee determined that they wanted to move forward on. What else can I answer for you? I'm looking through my notes to make sure I have answered all.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not that it applies to me at all, but you mentioned, that, I just wanna make sure I heard you right, property taxes will be frozen for RISD, residents over 65?
Over 65. they
Over
really is.
65,
Yeah.
not that I'm ready for that, but just asking, okay,
Yes.
yeah.
We are, again, we're one of 2 districts that still does that. And so that's a blessing for people who are in the community that are 65 plus, not you.
No,
Not you. But the fact that that is still in place, again, going back to the fiscal responsibility, like, the community wants this people to be able to come in and say, yes, you know, I've got my grandparents here and I've got my grandkids going to the community school. And so it is a nice perk of being a Richardson ISD.
I want to piggyback off of her question too.
Yeah.
If you are homesteaded, what does that mean? Does that mean that you don't get charged on a certain percentage of your home? Okay.
Yeah, it stops at a particular percentage. All right, you all have been super engaged, and I talked a whole lot today. Is there any final questions? Don't forget that there are, I'm gonna borrow this from you, we do have the printout of the colorful dot chart, so you can see what will be updated for your specific community campus. We've got all of this information on the website, the videos are there, the breakdowns are there, information about the middle school transformation specifically, information about what the bond steering committee did. It even has a breakdown of what each meeting looked like and how they made these decisions about why these specific things were so important. If there's anything else, you are welcome to come here, take a look, or find me, and I'm happy to answer those questions.